Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's episode. Today is going to be a quick Q&A. I got a great question on the Manifestation Challenge Facebook group, and it was a perfect question for an entire show. However, today's show will be pretty short. The question was asked by Grayson Nixon. She said, "Hey JJ, I was wondering your thoughts about the relationship between manifesting your own reality and predestined factors such as soul contracts and karma. Are positive manifestations able to override karmic debt and challenging lessons we are supposed to learn in this lifetime? The concepts both really resonate with me, but they appear to be somewhat contradictory. Thank you in advance. I'm such a fan of your work." Thanks, Grayson. Hopefully you did hear my Sacred Contracts show. And here's how I have positioned myself in Law of Attraction, because I know that in the past people have said, and my journey has been to uncover and answer questions that make sense to me. And what power do we have in this life if we say that everything's already set in motion? We don't have any. But simultaneously, what power or what do we have to look at when, let's say, bad things happen to good people or tragedy happens? And like whether it be the fires or shootings or something like that, how do you make sense of that? And I think that's where we get into, for those of you who believe in that you're the creator of your own reality and that you're an eternal being. Think about energy for a second. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It just changes form. So if you've seen someone in their alive state and then you've seen their body or their carcass after their soul has left them, most of us would agree that the energy in that body is no longer there. Well, where did it go? It's my belief that our energy just recycles, that we go back into pure positive energy and we decide when we want to come back down. And we've got a contract in this lifetime and we have multiple lives. And to me, it just makes sense on a physics level, and it also makes sense on a spiritual level. Because I can't imagine that a loving God or universe or creator would say, "Here, have one life, good luck, and make it worthwhile." I just don't think that feels like the right thing. And everyone that has a near-death experience comes back to say that they saw the light, that they were introduced to love. They never felt so much love in their life. And there's just stories over and over again. And it has always resonated with me. Now, in certain Law of Attraction states, let's say Abraham Hicks, when Esther channels Abraham, many times they want to encourage you to do what you can do. So for instance, to change your focus and to not necessarily deny your feelings, but to tell a different story or to make peace with what is going on in your life, because that's the power that you have. But I do absolutely believe that there are contracts. I actually have a family member who had passed away when he was 29 years old. And, we're going to do a show. I was requested from one of the listeners to do a show about borderline personality disorder. And so if you're listening, I have asked one of my former clients and colleague, Lisa Galper, who is now specializing in borderline personality disorder, to do a show, which we will record at the end of the year or beginning in January. And I will tell you up front that I'm a little skeptical about these clinical terms. And here's why. Because I don't know that I'll be able to tell this story on that show, because I want to be respectful of her education, her learning, and her belief, which is coming from a psychological point of view, not necessarily an energetic point of view. And when I look at psychologists or therapists or anybody like that, or even leaders, other people who I speak to on this show, people who are teaching similar things to me, what I like to check in with is if I think they're actually healed themselves, right? I've gone to many events where people who have huge lists and have massive followings and are supposed to be some kind of expert in this kind of field, and then I'm in their presence and I can feel they're not healed, and I can see the patterns of addiction. I can see the insecurities, and it really is good for me, not as a comparison, but as a reality check for me. In fact, it even got me to hire somebody to do social media for me, because I thought, why am I holding back? This guy, this girl, this company, they're doing so well, but they're human and they've got their stuff. They're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, but what am I doing? I can answer these questions better than this person can, I feel. And why am I not out there in the same way, in the same, reaching the same amount of people? So I check in with where I think people feel healed. And for a lot of you this week, you've heard the show with David Bayer, and we did the mind hack. And it's something like that where, what we're talking about, and we didn't go into that. And I don't know that he and I will on this show, about the 12-step programs and about people going on self-help journeys and what true healing really means. What does that look like? Back to my family member who ended up taking his life kind of in a way that most people could say it was an accident, even though I know it wasn't. He knew what he was doing, and even though it wasn't necessarily 100% intentional, it was vibrationally intentional. And he's a Libra, just like you, person who reached out to me about borderline personality disorder. And I watched how he grew up. For half of his life, he was encouraged and given love because he was smart and he got straight A's. And I watched how he was praised, he was put on a pedestal. They excused many other behaviors because what was important to his parents were that he had straight A's. And even being around them, once I saw him be extremely disrespectful, and I asked his mother, why do you let him talk to you that way? And she said, well, Jay, he gets straight A's. What can I do? And I was maybe 15, 16, maybe less than that. But I knew enough to know then that that was not an excuse for bad behavior. And that was a really poor judgment, in my opinion, of a reason why you honor or respect or accolade somebody because I got straight A's. That was ridiculous to me. So I watched that part of his life. And then I watched when he left school, because I knew that when you're that far on a pedestal, the only way to go when you get out into the real world was down. So when I went to college, it opened up a whole new part of him, and his artistic side wanted to come out, and he wanted to explore other things, and he started a band, and he got really dark, and his music was very angry and it was very upset. His art, he would make art, and the art was very dark, about death. A lot of it was about death, the lyrics to the songs, the colors and the art, and I saw the internal struggle. And for a Libras are about balance. And I felt like he was used to getting love and attention and validation for something that maybe wasn't in alignment with who he really was, but he did it because he liked the attention, the validation. And then when the rest of the world didn't care to give him the same love and attention, he didn't know what to do. And his identity was now changed. And now he's in the world not knowing how to get love and attention the same way because no one cares. Because everybody's at school doing different things, and it's such a tight environment when you leave high school. And so he struggled for a long time. And then he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and given drugs. And it's my belief, watching his entire life, that being a Libra and having literally two completely different experiences in life, one of which was the environment at home and being rewarded for grades and being rewarded for his brain, and then leaving and crashing because no one else was treating him that way, and then probably exploring his feelings and probably being very lost and very confused. So do I think he had borderline personality disorder? I don't. I actually think that people need to look at their brain chemistry. There's a test that I've been talking about for 10 years, and Jeannie finally snagged me a free one to take, and it's called, the company's called Senesco. And then we talked about biology of belief on the show on Tuesday, and that's another biology of belief. We can prove that your thoughts and the actions that you take and the thoughts that you think can help to create chemicals in your brain. The food that you eat creates neurotransmitters in your brain and the connections that we have there. So I don't buy into, and that's just me, and you may be getting very upset with me right now if you're someone who's been diagnosed with any of these things or had success by being diagnosed. I'm not about someone not getting help or not getting what they need. I'm about finding the truth about what's underneath it all. And do you really need a label on you to make something make sense, or a negative label that makes you feel like you're broken in some way, or that you can never get over it, or that you're always going to be an addict? Like somehow it's really about the substance and not about you. So how this wraps into this conversation, into this question, is that when my family member transitioned, I wasn't surprised, because I could feel his darkness and his sadness and his inability to process his emotions, his lack of outlet and understanding and connection with the people who rewarded him for certain behaviors, and now he was doing the opposite behaviors. So I saw a very confused man who didn't know how to function in the world. And now I wasn't super close to him in the end, although he did come to visit me in California and we did have some time together. I was getting all kinds of trouble, but, and we had conversations. But when he transitioned, while it was horrible for his family, do I believe that he chose it? Absolutely. Do I believe his contract was for him to be here and then leave? Absolutely. Even though it's horrible for everyone involved, the contract, just take a second to say, all right, if this was an accident, and if I believe this was an accident that wasn't supposed to happen, and he left too soon, and this was wrong, and that's the story you tell yourself, that feels horrible. And for the rest of your life, you will mourn and not think about him or the situation with any love necessarily and appreciation, because you'll be stuck on the fact that it was wrong or that it happened too soon. But if we think about that, if he did choose himself to take his own life, which I think he did, it's his life. And maybe this was what was supposed to wake up the family. Maybe this was supposed to challenge everyone's belief in the church, or challenge their belief about heaven, or challenge their understanding about emotions. Now, do I think it worked? I don't know, because I'm currently not in touch with most of my family on that side for other reasons that I'll disclose at another time. But the point is that he came to me in a dream. He came to me through a psychic and said everything was fine. I knew it was fine. It didn't mean I didn't miss him or that I wish it wouldn't have happened. But I do believe that there are contracts that we have. And I have been experiencing it. I had a kitten who I adopted before these cats a couple of years ago. And she got FIP. And I got her at 2 months old, and she died at 4.5 months old. And after I put her down, because she was literally like throwing up blood and her body was breaking down, when I rushed to take her to the vet to put her down, and I was just totally distraught. And I had just lost Doc, my other cat, like a couple months prior to that, although he died at 10 and I let him die at home naturally. When I went to the medical intuitive that I work with locally, she channeled Suki and said that her contract was to come and find a deep and profound love. And then she did. And then she was good. And then her contract was over. And I'm like, okay, well, what about me? Like I was totally fine with that for her. I mean, that made everything feel great. But, then there was, well, what am I supposed to be learning from this? What's my contract in this? My contract was to now become extremely wary and careful when vaccinating animals and just giving the power over to the vets. And I had already been doing alternative medicine and homeopathy and Chinese medicine for pets anyway, but this one really took the cake. I am very concerned that they overdose animals with these drugs, just like they overdose children. So anyway, as I digress. So when it comes to balancing the law of attraction versus things that need to change. Like, let's look at politics just for a second. I'm not going to get political on you, but let's just say that, sometimes we want what we want and it doesn't happen, but there's a bigger plan in motion. And sometimes the change that we want doesn't happen right away because it needs more momentum. So something negative or contrast has to happen to get more momentum. So it's the story that we tell ourselves, and hopefully after listening to the show we did about Mind Hack on Tuesday, you can put these two things together and realize that if you believe that life works out for you at every turn when you have contrast, you can either learn from it, leverage it, make peace with it, transmute it, lean into it, realize that it's not necessarily that it could be unintelligent and not necessarily intelligent, and that ultimately we come and we go, we ebb and we flow. We're here, we're not here. I had to make peace with like roadkill, and I would say it's just the carcass and the animal's gone. Or when I had to kill some ants because they're all over the floor, I'm like, as I'm killing them, which I don't like doing, but when you have 1 million ants on the floor, I mean, I don't know how to save them and get the ants out of my house. So as I'm killing them, I'm saying, hey, come back as something better next time. Come back as something with a little bit longer lifespan, okay? Ant is not necessarily the best idea. So that is how I rationalize, because it feels good to me and it makes sense. And I'm not saying that means that we shouldn't be upset or learn from or try for, with all these shootings that happen, what is it propel? It's gotten us to the place where children are standing up and saying, we're not coming to school. We need change because it's not happening. We need bigger momentum. So unfortunately, sometimes there's a big contrast needed to make a big change. And that's not going to happen when everything's hunky-dory. Something kind of negative has to happen in order to push change forward. And maybe sometimes people come down to be a part of that change, and they decide that their life for a temporary point in time is going to be dedicated towards that change. And then they go, and then they're going to come back eventually, right? So again, it's whether you are on board with this or not, just consider how you feel about it and the stories that you're telling. Remember what David and I talked about in terms of that most of the things that we tell ourselves are not true, the stories that we tell ourselves. So I would also just lean into that. Make sense of something on a level that makes sense to you, that resonates with you. But for me, I definitely do a combination of astrology, sacred contracts, law of attraction, because you do still have, even if everything is already predestined, you still have the power of your thoughts. And every day, every time you have a thought, you create a feeling, you create a story, you have a point of focus. And that can't be controlled by a contract. That is something you absolutely have 100% power over. So I hope that was helpful. I just want to remind everybody that we have passed the 2-pay option for Releasing What Weighs You Down. We're now at 1-pay only, but we are about a month away. So I'm hoping that some of you are really considering coming to the event. You're going to get 3 months of accountability coaching as part of the ticket. And it will be the last one we do like this, because I definitely want to change direction and I want to do something different with it. I don't know what yet. I have to see where I can take it and how that's going to look and what it's going to cost and all that good stuff, and who's going to be a part of it and what the curriculum's going to be like. So there's really a lot of good that comes out of Releasing What Weighs You Down. I can get you a roommate to share costs at the hotel. There's a free shuttle from the airport. You can use miles. It's January in California. You get all your meals covered, all your snacks. You get a gift bag. You get all your drinks covered. So it's really an experience. And I really invite anyone who is on the fence to just do it. I promise it will be worth it. We will make sure of that. And this one's going to be super special. And for anyone who's listening that's been to the first one, it will be different. It'll be different because we have different content. I'm doing different content. Jeannie's doing different content, and Michael's doing different content. So it's not going to be the same. And just like we talked about on a couple shows ago with Anne and creating space, if you're at the place in your life where you feel like you don't want to repeat this year in the same way, or if you keep dragging the same patterns and habits over and over again and you do the same thing, why not use this as your time to pattern interrupt and have a different experience? Have a different year. I promise at least the first 3 months will be changed, the first 4 months, because you buy the ticket, you also get 3 months of accountability coaching. Now, if the event is not of interest to you, or it's something that you're just not going to do, there are still a few spaces left in the Manifestation Mastermind, which is a 6-month commitment. And if you need details on that, you're going to have to email me. But those of you that have said you're interested, you got to pull the trigger. I can't hold your spaces. There are a few left, and I can't wait to work with all of you, the 20 people who are going to be involved starting in January on a Manifestation Mastermind. So go to jjflizanes.com, fill out the form if you need more information. But I hope today was helpful. Have a great rest of your week.